Hello everyone, my name is Tatiana and today I will be doing a Bible study on Daniel 8. This will be part 1 and we will be focusing on verses 1 through 14. So I have videos for Daniel 1 through 7 uploaded to my channel, so feel free to look at those to make sure that you're all caught up. In my previous video, we discussed Daniel 7 verses 15 to 28. And we discussed that Daniel had a vision of terrifying events that were to come. And God was showing him what was to come. But in the end, he was showing him that the people of God, along with Jesus, who is coming back for the second coming, they will rule forever. And everything that will come against them and oppose them would be destroyed. So in this video, like I said, we're going to be doing Daniel 8 verses 1 through 14, and we have additional scriptural references, which I'll post right here so you can follow along. So grab your Bible, grab a pen, and let's dive right in. Daniel 8 verses 1 says, "During the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, I, Daniel, saw another vision following the one that had already appeared to me. In this vision, I was at the fortress of Susa in the province of Elam, standing beside the Ulai River. As I looked up, I saw a ram with 2 long horns standing beside the river. One of the horns was longer than the other, even though it had grown later than the other one. The ram butted everything out of his way to the west, to the north, and to the south, and no one could stand against him or help his victims. He did as he pleased, and he became very great." In the previous chapter, there was a beast that had 10 horns. And the revelation behind the vision that Daniel had of the beast was that the horns represented kings. So as there were 10 horns, the interpretation of the vision was that the 10 horns equaled 10 kings that were to rise to power. So in this, with that same reasoning, the 2 horns on the ram would represent 2 kings that are going to come to power. And as it says that one horn was longer than the other, although it grew after the first horn, it is showing that one king will rise and then another king will rise. And as the second horn is longer, it can be inferenced that either the reign of the second king is longer or the second king would have more power than the first king. And similar to the beast in the previous chapter, it is shown that the ram in the vision will be given power to do with its victims whatever it wants. Verse 5 says, "While I was watching, suddenly a male goat appeared from the west, crossing the land so swiftly that he didn't even touch the ground. This goat, which had one very large horn between its eyes, headed towards the 2-horned ram that I had seen standing beside the river, rushing at him in a rage. The goat charged furiously at the ram and struck him, breaking off both his horns. Now the ram was helpless, and the goat knocked him down and trampled him. No one could rescue the ram from the goat's power." So we see that although the 2 kings who are going to rise to power was given authority to rule and do whatever they wished, there was something else that was going to rise with even more power than the 2 preceding kings. So I looked up the characteristics of a goat just to see whether or not the 3rd king, or the goat represented in the vision that was rising to power, was something that was positive. And the characteristics of a goat are that they're stubborn and independent. And there's a very famous passage in the Bible about goats, and it's where God separates the sheep from the goats in Mathew 25. So let's turn there real quick. Mathew 25:31 says, "But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left hand. Then the king will say to those on his right, the sheep, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. So from this, we see that the sheep are one who have a heart after doing what's pleasing to God. And not only that, they do things with a heart posture of servitude and submission to the Father. Verse 41 says, Then the king will turn to those on the left, the goats, and say, Away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons. For I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison and you didn't visit me. Then they will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and not help you? And he will answer, I tell you the truth, when you refused to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me. And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will go into eternal life. In Matthew 25, we see that the goats were rejected by God because of their heart posture and their unwillingness to help and to serve others as God expects of us. This is paralleled with Daniel 8 because we see that the goat, it forced its way into power. It says that it ran towards the ram and attacked the ram in a rage. Although the ram was helpless, the goat still attacked the ram and trampled him. So it's an illustration of almost like a ruthless and prideful stance that the goat is taking in terms of forcing its way into power. Verse 8 of Daniel 8 says, The goat became very powerful, but at the height of his power, his large horn was broken off. In the large horn's place grew 4 prominent horns, pointing in the 4 directions of the earth. Then from one of the prominent horn came a small horn, whose power grew very great. It extended towards the south and the east and towards the glorious land of Israel. Its power reached to the heavens, where it attacked the heavenly army, throwing some of the heavenly beings and some of the stars to the ground and trampling them. So we see on the goat that the horn that it originally had is replaced by other horns. And in the previous chapter, that was a switching or a changing of power. And then we also see the small horn that was illustrated in the previous chapter. And the small horn was the greatest of all. So we're seeing that great power is given to the goat. And then it says that the power of the goat reached the heavens. And it said that some of the stars were thrown to the ground. This is seen in Revelation 12, 3-4. So let's go there real quick. And it says, Then I witnessed in heaven another significant event. I saw a large red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, with 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept away 1/3 of the stars in the sky and threw them to earth. So in Revelations, we see similar language in terms of stars being swept down to the ground. Scholars say that the stars actually represent angels that are fallen. Verse 11 says, It even challenged the commander of the heaven's armies by canceling the daily sacrifices offered to him and by destroying his temple. So if you go back to Daniel 7 verses 25, it says that the 4th beast will try to change the sacrificial laws and festivals. Here we're seeing that this kingdom that is going to rise to power will put an end to the daily sacrifices made in the temple. So once again, we're seeing this religious persecution taking place. in Daniel 8. Verse 12 says, "The army of heaven was restrained from responding to this rebellion. So the daily sacrifice was halted and truth was overthrown. The horn succeeded in everything it did." So similar to what we see in Daniel 7:24, the beast that was in that chapter was given great power and was allowed to wage war against God's holy people. It said that he would even try to change the religious festivals and laws. Here we're seeing that the goat, which represents the kingdoms that are to rise to power, will cancel the daily sacrifices. And as it says that the armies of heaven will be restrained from acting against the goat, we see that God is allowing all of this to take place. And with the canceling of the daily sacrifices, it shows once again religious persecution. So just like Revelations 13 says, the people of God, the people of the Most High, will have to endure patiently the persecution and stay faithful. Verse 13 says, "Then I heard two holy ones talking to each other. One of them asked, 'How long will the events of this vision last? How long will the rebellion that causes desecration stop the daily sacrifices? How long will the temple and heaven's army be trampled on?' The other replied, 'It will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the temple will be made right again.'" So once again, we see that God has given Daniel an illustration of the things to come, not necessarily for us to be fearful of it, but for us to prepare ourselves, because what God says in his word will come to pass. So God is gracious enough to give us these warnings and these indicators of the events that are to come so that we can be prepared. And when we see these things coming, we do not crumble under pressure. And the good thing is that, as they said, the two holy ones that we're discussing, there is a time limit. There is a beginning to this and there's also an end, so that we can be assured that the things to come, the persecutions to come, the trials to come, they will not last forever. So this is where we'll stop our study for Daniel 8, 1 through 14. As always, I pray that it was a blessing to you. I would love to hear from you, so please comment below what the Lord has been speaking to you about when you read through Daniel 8. I love to read you guys' comments, and I thank you for watching this video. I pray that you have a blessed day.